Welcome action fans, and thanks for joining us for the last time to all 90s action all the time. Yes, you might have heard that this is going to be our final episode for now. We are going on an indefinite hiatus. This might be the last one forever. It might not be the last one forever. We shall see. It's just become kind of a little bit too much to do this podcast alongside my other podcasts, New Horror Express, and obviously my regular co-host runs another podcast as well, Bloodhound Picks. And the scheduling has just become a little bit too much. So unfortunately, we're going to have to bring this podcast to a close for now. It may reopen again at some point. We may do special episodes in the future when we both have time. But for now, this is going to be our final one. But we've still got one more movie to talk about before we head off into the sunset. And that movie is a nostalgic quote-unquote classic from my childhood, actually from Craig's as well, but sadly he can't be with us today. It is that classic slice of 90s cheese that is Three Ninjas. Like I said, Craig can't be with me, but I did need to have a co-host for this one because, you probably don't want to listen to me just talking into a microphone myself like a madman. No, you want to have conversation, and that conversation is going to be brought to you by our special guest. He's a podcaster, he's a Nick Cage expert, he's a ninja master. It's Petros from Caged In Coppola Connections. Welcome to the show, Petros.
Thank you so much for having me, and I feel somewhat emotional to be and privileged to be the final guest. And I'm not sure normally. I'm glad that it was announced before. Yeah, I'm so glad that it wasn't announced that this was the final episode after I was a guest, because I definitely, my self-esteem and my brain would have been going, it's because of me, isn't it? It's because of me that the podcast is over. The numbers were so bad that they said, we can't do this anymore. Look at it. We've had one person listen, and that was Petros, just making sure he doesn't say too many egregious things about himself. Thank you so much for letting me to come kick some ass one last time with you.
No, it's our pleasure. Or it's my pleasure. I say our pleasure as if, I guess, because Craig's normally here. So, yeah. But it's my pleasure, to have you on the show. You have a great podcast yourself, and I wanted to have you on. And when you were keen to talk about this movie, I thought, yes, perfect. We can collaborate. So before we get into the movie, and before we get into your relationship with the movie as well, as always, I usually read out some background information on the film, and I will do that now. So today's film was released on August the 7th, 1992, and was directed by John Turteltaub, who also directed films such as Cool Runnings and films that I'm sure you've covered, Petros, the National Treasure films. And the story was by Kenny Kim, who only has one other credit, which is a movie called Young Bai. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the screenplay was by Edward Emmanuel, who also only has one other screenwriting credit on IMDb, which is Sun Yat-sen in The Mouth of the Dragon. Review-wise, it is currently sitting on 32% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 22 reviews, 36 on Metacritic based on 15 reviews, and it has a 2.6 on Letterboxd. At the box office, it made $29 million off of a $2.5 million budget, making it the 47th biggest film of 1992. And surprisingly, slightly outgrossing both The Player and The Muppets Christmas Carol. And that was good enough box office to then spawn 3 whole sequels.
I find it baffling that this outsold A Muppets Christmas Carol, which I think, like, especially having Christmas just passed and the kind of every year that film is trotted out and kind of people just fawn over it and kind of talk about how much they love it. And I'm sure if you do a straw poll of people like who have seen Three Ninjas, they'll go, what? Who? What are you talking about? And so it's crazy that this outsold that film.
Yeah, no, it is kind of mad. Like, but it's not, it doesn't always add up, you know, because I was looking at the box office for 1992, and in terms of the films that people remember and the films that are at, you know, were big at the box office at the time, it doesn't always kind of match up, because, like, this movie made nearly 3 times as much as Glengarry Glen Ross.
Wow.
Like, Glengarry Glen Ross made like $10 million at the box office. This made $29 million, you know? And it was like, you know, again, you know, if you're a movie head, you know, if you're a, you know, a cineast, you know, obviously you'll be aware of Glengarry Glen Ross. And like most people would be like, Three Ninjas, huh? You know, unless you're of a very specific age group, i.e. you're probably in your mid-30s. 90% of people, you know, won't remember this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, I think this film it couldn't have been made at any other time as well. It is a perfect time capsule, I think, of 1992 as well. So I think it's a good film that if you're going to do like a time capsule of the year to really boil down the essence of what that era was like, this is a good representation of that, because I guess Glengarry Glen Ross could, I don't know, it feels like a film that could be made any time in a weird way. Do you know what I mean? It could have been a 50s movie, it could have been a 60s movie, easily could have been a 70s movie with how existential and kind of bleak it is on its outlook on life. So yeah, I think Three Ninjas really encapsulates what the early 90s was like in cinema in a weird way, especially kind of popcorn fare.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, like, everything about this movie is so early 90s. Down to the fact that I think you could show the people the poster for this film and be like, holy crap, that's early 90s. Where they're like, just the color palette of the poster where they're all like karate kicking and it's you know, that kind of purple and yellow thing. You know, it's just like, you just know that it comes from this period. Definitely.
Yeah. And it's a film that if there isn't like certain films that came before it, it doesn't exist as well. And I guess like you can look at that as a positive, or you can look at it that this is slightly ripping off films that came out right before it.
That is very true. Like, I guess given the review scores, it was looked on negatively by critics of the time. But it is like a kind of weird mix-up of like various things that were kind of various movies that had kind of come before it. You know, it's kind of like part Karate Kids, part Bill and Ted, part Home Alone, part Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, and even like part Beverly Hills Cops 2 as well, in like some regards, like the FBI kind of angle to it, and like, I don't know, the whole arms deal like aspect of it feels very like 80s action movie. So very much feels we're in the right place to be talking about it as well on this podcast.
Absolutely. Even down to the fact that weirdly the actor that they got to play the villain, Rand Kingsley, who like only has like one other credit. Like he was just in this movie and like in something else. Even down to the fact that he looks a bit like Steven Seagal.
Yeah. Yeah, he looks like that, or like a poor man's Terry Silver.
Yes, I was also thinking that. Yeah, it's like he's a bit Seagal, he's a bit Terry Silver. Yeah. I definitely think they had watched Karate Kid 3 as well. Like, because I almost feel like they draw more inspiration from Karate Kid 3 than they do like the original Karate Kid.
Yeah, it feels like they kind of like go, we like those bits from 1, we'll crib those. And we like the kind of villain aspect of somebody who's like an adult villain. Do you know what I mean? It's like kind of the first film, the villain somewhat is Johnny, and the kids, even though you have Kreese kind of as the puppet master, like Terry Silver. And I guess we'll see that come to fruition in Cobra Kai season 4 with Terry. Maybe this is the time that this film gets reassessed, is like, obviously that has had its like resurgence and stuff like that, and like Terry Silver's going to be back on screens. Maybe people will see screenshots of this film online or whatever and be like, oh, maybe I should check out that. He looks a bit Terry Silvery. We'll check out what Snyder's got going on.
Yeah, and like, it's like, I actually really like Ryan Kingsley's performance in this, like, as Snyder, cause he just seems like he's having such a fun time. He's just like every action movie villain cliche rolled up in one, but I still kind of enjoy that. Yeah,
and like really, he comes out with some like really adult lines for a kids movie as well. I think, like, in the film, twice, he threatens somebody by ripping out one of their organs. His kind of, like, big thing to the grandfather is, like, you either do this or I'll rip out your heart. And then later on in the film, his kind of subordinate, Mr. Brown, as he kind of, like, relishes saying every time he says his name, it's always, Mr. Brown. He threatens to rip out his liver. And it's like, that's pretty heavy stuff for a kids movie.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore. I really picked up on those lines as well. And like the way he weirdly enunciates things as well, like is kind of, there's something kind of offbeat about the way he says certain lines that I was kind of amused by as well.
Mm-hmm. It's weird seeing as I haven't seen this film since being a kid. There was just rushes of memories coming back. Like a lot of the time, like lines he says when he's like, "I like surprises," or like as he escapes by. Again, it feels like lifted off of a scene out of Miami Vice or something, jumps off of a building onto the ladder from a helicopter and says like, I would love to hang around, but I've got to fly. And then like kind of just like hanging on this ladder kind of like goes off into the sunset. And it's like, as you said, Rand Kingsley is having an absolute ball of a time with Snyder.
And he does seem quite self-aware as a kind of action movie villain, because there is one point where he just goes, God, I love being the bad guy.
Yeah, definitely. And like, you often think like, I don't know, like, is it cliche or is it like how self-aware are the filmmakers in regards to that as well? Do you know what I mean? Is that scripted? Is that something that like he's kind of gone, oh, I know the assignment, I'm going to kind of play about here with it? And like, I think, I don't know, tonally, his character could be seen as a bit jarring. Like this film definitely is a mix of tones and kind of, the things it's going for. Are kind of like, oh, we're in this movie now. Okay. Like, I'll go with it. I'm enjoying it. Like, let's see where it goes next.
Yeah, there is definitely various kind of levels of kind of like, because like you say, there is elements to this movie, particularly near the start of the movie, that's like, it's like a kind of gritty 80s action movie, you know, with like the FBI sting, you know, at the start. Which, you know, like I was watching this movie as well, and I have to say, for the most part, surprisingly unproblematic for a 1992 film. But there are certain elements. One of those elements is like one of the FBI agents is undercover as like an Arab sheik, and he's just got he's just got this really fake looking stick on mustache and this kind of it's not a turban, it's like, you know, what would you call them?
Yeah, like the headdress with the kind of
the headdress.
Yeah, and it's like it's very stereotypical. It's that kind of, you would get a really bad taste fancy dress costume called like Arab Sheikh. Do you know what I mean? Like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and people will be like, well, that's Halloween sorted. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going as an oil baron or something like that. Like, and that guy's revealed to be an American, right? And he's like that is the thing. He's speaking in a like an Arab accent, and then all of a sudden goes, "Hey, buddy, one more thing. You're under arrest." And it's like, oh, he's Kevin Jones. Do you know what I mean? All American man.
The more kind of fun element of that scene is like, I like when villains do things to kind of pointlessly show off. Like, there's no need for them to do it, but they just do it anyway. And when, like, Snyder reveals the goods by elbowing the box and breaking it and then taking the weapon out of it, I was like, what a move. That is great. And then, it's when he delivers that line as well, because obviously he's not come to this party without, like, his plus 50, like, kind of stereotypical ninjas in their all black get-up, when he says, like, I love surprises, and you just kind of see them rappelling down from ropes and stuff like that. Well, I think the thing that I found jarring about this film is, for, like, a crack team of ninja villains, they are very quick to, like, use automatic weapons or handguns. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like they're very quick to be like, yeah, but we're also arms dealing terrorists as well. Like, there's definitely like a terrorist thread to this that doesn't really get talked about. That is true. There is a lot of that, of like kind of, oh, our ninja powers have failed us. Well, thankfully, we have these AK-47s on hand. Yeah, I got an AR-15 just in case I can't beat up this 10-year-old. Yeah. Although, in terms of, like, when you actually, we're kind of skipping about a bit, but, like, when you see the kind of ninjas revealed later on, at the end of the movie, like, en masse, like, you're like, oh, okay, I expected them to probably be, like, Japanese, but they just look like kind of middle-aged mall cops for some reason. This is, and white is their white, Yeah. You get a bit of tokenism in regards to kind of representation from like, the Asian community in certain roles, and I'm sure we'll get to one of them who gets, one character who gets kind of. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later. So like kind of rewinding a little bit, I need to talk about kind of your relationship to this movie. That's normally how we start before we get into the film, but it's not your fault. I'm the host. It's fine. We've done it a bit backwards. We've got overexcited. So let's talk about that now. So Petros, you can.
So I'm trying to think when exactly I would have seen this. So it would have been definitely pre-1999. And I remember it would have been recorded off the TV in like a brief window when we had Sky for a year. Cause I remember it had like the Sky Movies like title card on the VHS we had recorded it on off the TV. And I remember, it was definitely pre-1999 because I remember after we got rid of Sky for some reason our satellite dish picked up German TV. So like, I remember around then, like, watching Jackass maybe on, like, just because we picked up German MTV and stuff like that. But I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. I remember like all definitely the first 3 Three Ninjas movies kind of had a big impact on us, and we would, me, my brother and sister would play Three Ninjas, like we would kind of, and being the youngest and probably the most unathletic of the 3, I was just like automatically Tum Tum, which like at the time I was like, I love it. He's eating jelly beans, he's eating like Twizzlers all the time. I'm into it. I'll be the little rotund third wheel of the gang, and I loved it. It was kind of everything. I remember, there's photos of me in a karate gi as a kid. I lapped it up. I remember again being like, I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love the Karate Kid. So this was very much in my wheelhouse of things that I enjoyed, and it felt weirdly, and like, especially looking back on it now and talking to other people about their experiences of this film, is like, it felt like it was mine. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was kind of mine and my siblings, because not many other people had heard about it. I maybe bought one of the sequels in like a video shop, or just like a kind of news agent that sold videos as well. I remember it came in a really bulky, remember those really bulky VHS cases that kind of inside had like an extra slot for the VHS almost.
Oh, right, yeah, like the kind of,
you had to kind of click it.
Ones. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of had to click it down into it. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure like Kickback came in that. Even at that age, feeling weirdly disappointed by that film, possibly. And then, because I just had this love for the original, especially like being a kid who'd kind of grown up watching like Home Alone as well, because it had that aspect of it. And I think when it came to the ones that didn't have that original cast in it, I was a bit like, hey, what's going on here? This doesn't feel right to me. Like, I want those 3 guys back. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, because I had the first 2 on VHS. Like, the first time I feel like I'm probably slightly older than you. So the first time I picked this up was, I'm not sure, I probably, whenever it came out on VHS, so probably around 93 or 94, parents bought me this on VHS. And I really loved this movie. And, Kickback, I also, picked up on VHS as part of a birthday or whatever. And, I was a bit disappointed as well, and I had a very similar thing, because me and my brother were kind of into kind of martial arts, and we were into wrestling and stuff like that, so we're always kind of play fighting and stuff like that, much to the annoyance of my mum. And it was just, it just struck me at the right time, I guess. I like you, I was very into Karate Kid, I was very into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Later I would get into like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and all that. But when I first picked this up, I was a little bit too young, for those movies. And, I just thought this movie was great. I mean, obviously it's not as great as I thought it was when I was, 7, 8 years old, but it's still quite a fun watch.
Yeah, that is the thing. Like, I went on a podcast called Ramblin', an Amblin podcast, and I picked a film solely off the basis of something that I remember as a kid absolutely loving. And then once I picked Three Ninjas, I was like, I'm excited, but at the same time, I'm apprehensive because after talking about Harry and the Hendersons, I was like, I don't think it's as good as my like childhood memories of it are. And it's like that element of sometimes you wish you had kept things in the past. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of have those memories of them. Whereas like this experience of watching it again was kind, I don't know, it was like seeing old friends again, and like I could kind of forgive it for its foibles and the things that didn't quite work. 'Cause it was like a real hit of nostalgia, because I imagine at the time it meant so much to me, like, and I must have watched it because like, I don't know, I almost had like sensory memories just from hearing like certain lines, or like like the score for it just kind of like really just like brought me back to eating fish cakes and waffles as a kid, like watching it and absolutely loving it. So yeah, it was good to watch it and not have my fucking not have my childhood ruined, as a lot of fucking big babies say online a lot of the time.
Oh yeah. Oh god, there's a lot of that. But I get what you mean in terms of like there are certain movies you watch as a kid and you love as a kid, and then you go back to them years later and you're like, yeah, this is not good at all. It's not even a fun time. But like like it brought back all these kind of warm childhood memories, and it did feel like a kind of like an old friend. And yes, I can see its flaws, and there are certain things in it that I can see now that I couldn't see as a kid. I've seen like a lot of martial art movies now, and like as a kid, I thought the fight choreography in this movie was badass. The fight choreography in this movie is mediocre. Let's be honest. Also, like, in the opening scene, there's things that you just don't pick up on as a kid that I pick up on now. Like, for example, how obvious Victor Wong's stunt double is a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah. It's a man half his age with like a pillow, like on, like kind of strapped to his belly to make him look like he's a bit more portly. And they did like one thing I always look out for in like stunt doubles is hair, and they don't even bother. Like,
it's the worst wig. It's the worst grey wig they've put on this guy.
The hairline's not right. Like, they haven't got the kind of recede to the right point. No. They kind of, and you kind of watched it going, either, I don't know, it's like that thing of like, either get someone who can do it, or don't make him do, or don't make the character do all this outlandish stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like flips and kind of like, I don't know, moving around like he's a 22-year-old. Like, make him move around, make the fact that he is an older man a part of the humour of it, not he's some kind of superhero ninja master who, for all intents and purposes, is not teaching these kids ninjutsu at all. He's teaching them karate.
Well, that is the thing with, I mean, the funny thing about this movie is, sometimes it forgets that it's, a ninja movie. And, yes, all the kids were martial artists. They at least went to the lengths of casting kids who were martial artists, all trained in karate. So like the main style that you see in the film is karate. And sometimes the movie itself forgets that they're the ninja thing, because like at one point Snyder talks about karate studios, and at another point the dad, who clearly must know that like his stepfather, his father-in-law, not his stepfather, his father-in-law is like a ninja guy, because it's talked about by the mother plenty enough. But he at one point says like, stop training them that karate.
Yeah, I think that though is what is bizarre. What I find, like, looking back on this film now is quite bizarre, is that obviously they would have grown up with their grandfather, but it's just the fact that it happens to be this summer that like it's like they've just been trained by him, like especially the way that the dad like kind of responds to all of it. It's like surely they've grown up with a ninja grandpa, so it would have been like old hat. It wouldn't have been like a new thing to any of them. Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas the dad's kind of like going like, I don't know, what's this new thing you're into? Like you've brought home like a kind of like, I don't know, 92, like you brought home a Nirvana CD, and he's like, what's this new music? Like, what's this new? It's not that. It's like, that you would imagine that it would have been ingrained in them from kind of like being toddlers, that they kind of, legit, I mean, like hitting things and stuff like that. But the film treats it like this is a totally new thing to all of them, because it's like that summer is, that we get at the beginning is treated like it is the awakening of the ninja in them, and it's like, but at the same time, it's like you've grown up with your grandpa being around, or unless they didn't, and the film has done a terrible job of not explaining the fact that he's not been on the scene, and this is the first summer that they've got to spend with him. I don't know.
Yeah, but that just can't be the case, because they seem quite advanced in their training. They don't seem like they're like white belts or anything. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like the whole kind of naming ceremony at the start is because like they have completed like the kind of first main stage of their training. You know, like they're ascending to the kind of the next level kind of thing. So it does seem like they've been training them for ages. Mm-hmm. Since they were, babies, basically.
Not an 8-week holiday in the summer, just kind of like, and even when it comes to some of that training, like, and one of the training things that the grandpa does that is kind of vital to the film, like later on, is he wheels out this kind of, I don't know, scarecrow that lights up and kind of pressure points and stuff like that. And he kind of shows them very quickly like how it works, and then goes, all right guys, you've got an hour with it and then you're done. And it's like, surely that is something that you would like to really master, that technique and all of those, like to really know those points minutely. Cause he has that big speech, doesn't he? Where he's like, hit the doll here, and like, and then Rocky does it, and then moments later, like, hit here, and he's like, "But Grandpa, that's the same spot." And he's like, "No, it's half an inch difference. It makes all the difference in the world." And then he says to him, "You've got an hour, guys. All right, have fun. I'll see you inside for dinner." And it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, they are kind of presented as kind of martial art geniuses in the movie, because like you don't even have those kind of scenes where like you normally get in like martial art training montages, be it in like Karate Kid or Kickboxer or whatever, whatever you're watching, where like the master tries to teach them something and then they don't quite get it, but then through a montage they manage to get it, kind of thing. Like, no, these kids just pick everything up immediately. Like he says, when he's talking about like kick here, then but no, it's a half an inch difference. They've still immediately hit all the things first time. So, like, obviously they only need an hour, because, like...
a slight theory I have on this is that the whole film, because obviously, like, it opens with the kids narrating it, which and they're like bickering and like kind of saying like, this is all about the summer that changed our lives when we became ninja masters. And like, you could look at the film that like, it is told from their perspective. So as being children, they are fucking lying about how good they are at karate. Like, that's a way you can explain away how good they are at karate. It's just been like, do you know what I mean? Like, if a kid tells you a story and it's like, yeah, and then I did this and I did it first time. Like, do you know what I mean? As opposed to like, I don't know, leaving out the bits where it's like, I was a bit crap at this certain thing. But that may be me giving the filmmakers and the writers a bit too much credit, and especially a thing that an element of the film that happens at the start and then is dropped completely, maybe, well, seconds after it happens the first time. There's no more voiceover whatsoever.
That is true. That is true. I like, it is an interesting theory. I like the theory that parts of this film actually took place, but other parts in the film did not take place. They're just lying.
Well, yeah, they're at least, like, if you tell a story, they're putting like a little bit of spice. They're adding like a 15% onto what actually happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, they might have had a tussle, but it was nowhere near as kind of like glossy or slick as the film portrays it to be. Even though the film, as you pointed out, the choreography is mediocre at best.
Yeah, and like that is one of the things that really stood out to me rewatching it, because like I said, I had it in VHS. I watched it throughout my childhood. The last time I watched it, I'd probably be in my early teens or something. So like, but yeah, I don't remember the fight choreography being as kind of mediocre, and I don't remember the stunt double thing as much either, you know, because it really stood out to me. I was like, geez, the stunt double work is just like, they're not even trying to hide it's not Victor Wong. It's bizarre.
I like the fact though that they kind of learn the mistake, not mistakes, but they kind of, they see something like The Karate Kid and be like, oh, that film takes like a good 40 minutes or so before like Daniel is even doing karate. Like, this film is literally opens with like a montage of them training. Do you know what I mean? It's like straight in with kind of, here's some ninja stuff, here's them kind of doing their training, whether it's, and kind of culminates in them like planning an ambush on their grandpa, like jumping out on his car and trying to beat the shit out of him. And it's like, I kind of understand what their dad has some gripes with. It's like, if he's like, yeah, this is how you plan an ambush, kids. Do you know what I mean? Not even, and like the kind of lesson he tries to teach them is like, don't go into a fight, like, don't go into a fight unless you're going to win. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you can't beat them up, don't do it. And it's like, surely it should be self-defense. If somebody, like, brings a fight to you, like, defend yourself, not like, if you're going to beat someone up, make sure you can crush them.
It is quite a bizarre lesson. But I think, like, you know, what you were talking about of like it going straight into a training montage, I think that's part of probably why it appealed to kids at the time, because this movie is like a pure sugar rush. Like, I clocked it when Snyder visits Grandpa, at his house, and the three ninjas are fighting his goons and Grandpa's fighting some of Snyder's goons. That happens 15 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
Like, things just keep happening, and you're just like, I'm going along with it.
Yeah, so at that point we've had a montage, we've had the arms deal, we've had the naming ceremony, like, it's a full, like, no messing about, and it's like, really, like, in regards to writing, it is kind of like, let's set up the stakes for this as quick as possible. And then kind of, I don't know, gets waylaid a bit in the kind of middle of like, what is this? Do you know what I mean? We kind of need to pad out the middle. It's like, oh, we've seen Home Alone. Let's do that. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, let's have like a 5 to 10 minute sequence of the kids playing basketball. Like,
That's true, yeah. There is you do have like this first opening kind of 20 minutes or so that's just like non-stop action, and then it's like the filmmakers are like, yeah, we can't keep this pace up. And also, what's the plot of this movie? Oh, okay, we'll try and establish some sort of character or narrative. One of the things I wanted to say as well is like we've discussed that generally this movie's relatively harmless and unproblematic, but the one line that I think you cannot get away with now is when the kids are singing, and at one point when they're coming back from Grandpa's, and Rocky sings the line, and I shot my poor teacher with a 44 stud. And I was like, yes, that's a pre-Columbine line if ever there was one.
Yeah, that's like pretty heavy, right? And it's kind of, I don't know, it's bizarre. It doesn't feel like the kind of song you would be singing if you just had the summer of your life. Do you know what I mean?
No,
like,
that's true.
I know going back to school is a kind of like, I don't know, sends people with dread and kind of cold sweats, but like, yeah, to say you're going to shoot your teacher is definitely over the mark and what is cool.
Definitely, for sure. And that's, there's a clear, obviously, sociopathic side to Rocky that is not explored in the movie, but yeah, further examination needed on that. So I suppose we should also talk about like you mentioned, the kind of Home Alone part of the section of the movie. And, we have these 3 kidnappers because Snyder, despite all his resources and stuff, obviously the FBI is watching him, so he cannot order his men, even though, anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute, to go to the house of the Douglas kids. So he orders his man, his sidekick, Mr. Brown, to get, people to kidnap the kids. And those people are these, like, surfer dudes who are clearly ripped off from Bill and Ted and kind of movies of the time. Like, I was going to say Wayne's World as well, but I don't think, or maybe the SNL sketches existed at this point. Like, the movie, I can't remember, I don't know when in 92 Wayne's World came out, but they came out the same year, so probably not ripped from the movie, but the sketches, the SNL sketches might have already been there, I guess.
Well, it's that archetype, isn't it, of those kind of slacker dudes. And I don't know, they don't seem like the type, not to like pigeonhole, but they're like, their introduction is that they're sticking up like a convenience store, and it definitely like, logic is thrown out the window as well, because of the type they are, they kind of like, no cares in the world, just eating stuff in their van, like throwing the crusts or whatever in the back, or like just, throwing rubbish everywhere. But the leader, Fester, has a pager, which like doesn't fit the archetype that they are, especially seeing as they have a sticker on their van that says "Die Yuppie Scum." A beeper feels very yuppie. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like everything they're against.
You're absolutely right. When you were talking about him having a pager, I was like, yeah, it does seem like a yuppie thing, and the fact that they have this "Die Yuppie Scum" thing on their van, it just seems like incongruous to what the characters. I don't know. The characters, again, like, I'm not sure. The actors playing those guys do definitely feel like, particularly the guy who plays Fester, do definitely feel like actors playing slackers. How in the way that, like, Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves come off as, like, convincing slackers of, like, they could be those characters. Whereas, like, this gang, you do feel like, they're play acting.
Yeah, and like the one of the things I like noted when like Fester came on screen, and like his kind of face is like ingrained in my brain, is he looks like a young John Larroquette, like the bad guy from Richie Rich.
Yes. Yeah. He does have a very unique face. I agree with that. Like, it is a face that, like, when I think about this movie, it's one of the, things I think about from this movie, or is emblazoned in my memory from this movie. Yeah.
But and back to your point of like why they are brought in, like the film does do a job of kind of explaining why, but then like their explanation as to why then presents problems further down the line in the plot. Is that like Snyder and Mr. Brown are very aware that the FBI are kind of trailing them. So they're like, oh, we can't use our regular goons. We're going to have to get somebody outside of the kind of sphere of our regular people. So they go for these guys who I think like Mr. Brown mentions in the past, they did like some delivery work for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, surely, if they'd done that for them, you would know how incompetent they are as like a kind of trio of goons, because like, they're sent out to like grab them that night, and like, yeah, like they have a very fair point that they get to the house and it's kind of swarmed with FBI agents kind of going in for like a nice cup of coffee and a debrief of what's gone on in the day. And then they like proceed to basically stalk the kids the next day, right?
Yeah. They like kind of stalk them in the van while they cycle to school or cycle through some sort of thing that is, told you to keep out, but they just want to do some BMXing, do some jumps and stuff. Oh, Tum Tum doesn't. He doesn't want to do that. He likes downhill, but he doesn't like the jumping.
I'm sure as well that when they get into that fender bender with a cop car, those guys would be wanted for something, considering the night before they had like stuck up a convenience store. Do you know what I mean? Like, they seem like, as we said, like Fester is he's got a very like recognizable face that when that cop had that fender bender would have gone, hey, you match the exact description of those guys who turned over that store last night. And even that is like, when they're in that store, they like fire off a few like warning shots beforehand. It's like, that feels like something that would not be allowed in a kids movie today, right? It's kind of like, sticking up a store and being like, here's a couple of shots, we mean fucking business. If you don't give us the money, we're actually going to shoot you.
Yeah, it's quite intense for a kids film. And like you said about the lines, Snyder delivers about like ripping out livers and hearts, it does seem like quite, meaty stuff for a kids film, for a family film. It's like, this is a bit, seems maybe a little bit over the top, but you wouldn't get away with it now, right enough. But back in 1992, it was all good.
I guess somebody we should talk about is Emily, because
yes.
she very much feels like a product of the time, and by that I mean a very poorly written female character who seems to, her only agency is, oh, Rocky, like, what? She's on board with the name straight away as well, and she's like, oh, Rocky, what are we doing? Are we doing this? She's kind of like plays this almost like damsel in distress, but also like takes on like a motherly role straight away as well, where she's like, oh, don't be showing off and stuff like that. And it just feels like, oh, really? Is that how you're going to write like a female character in this? Like, she's riding her BMX with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's there willing to do the jumps and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know, cut her some slack, guys. Do you know what I mean? They just treat her like shit. Yeah,
I mean, like you say, it's very much a product of the time. Like, she spends most of her screen time either swooning over Rocky and kind of being like, oh, Rocky, oh, or like being, like a nag, you know, and that's how she's written, and, you know, telling them off, and, you know, like you say about showing off and stuff like that. And just like, yeah, you really didn't put any effort into filling out this character at all. And it, like you say, it's kind of weird as well, because she does have like a couple of moments where it feels like she's kind of one of them. Like in, you know, when she, in the house, when in the kind of Home Alone segment that we're, you know, kind of getting into, like when she's kidnapped by the kidnappers and she's held at gunpoint, she, like, you know, stamps on the guy and then you know, punches the guy in the face and that, and in that moment she's like, oh, she's all right, and you kind of think at that moment it's like, oh, she's kind of becoming more one of them or something like that, or maybe she's got, but like, no, basically that's her one moment of like being a bit badass, and then she's just put back in her box. And yeah, there's really it's a nothing character. It doesn't really need to be there, because it's so poorly written.
Yeah, and like another kind of plot point that kind of, I don't know, kind of comes out of nowhere, and I'm not sure, like, I'm pretty sure that like its resolution has been edited, like the film has been edited in a way that the resolution was supposed to come a lot earlier. Is the confrontation with like the local bullies and the basketball match, and then is obviously that is the kind of coda scene on the end of the film where they get the bikes back. But for all intents and purposes, everyone in that scene is dressed exactly the same as like the day when they lose their bikes in that basketball match. And it feels like in the original script that was supposed to resolve all in the same day, yet they tack on that scene of them fighting at the end with the bullies and getting their bikes back. Like, yeah, it's tacked on the end, where it's like, it's clearly filmed at the same time. And like, even to the fact, yeah, Rocky, everyone's wearing the exact same clothes, and it's like got that, I don't know, that callback line where Emily says to Rocky, like, yeah, you can show off. And it's like, I don't know, you've been through so much. Do you know what I mean? You've been through like a kidnapping and like been held at gunpoint, that this feels like a weird place to kind of resolve the film. I don't know, is it supposed to be like, oh, but at the same time they're kids, and the bigger worries they should be having is these local bullies. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, it seems bizarre.
So, because they kind of do the same thing in Kickback, where they, I don't know, like, because the movie in, you know, Kickback ends and the kind of main plot, the plot A ends, but then like there's like a callback in the kind of coda scene in that movie. There's like a callback where basically they were they had like a baseball game or something, and then they fail at the baseball game, but they learn the lessons from the mission that they went on in Japan, and they come back and they win the baseball game, you know, like which again, it feels like a weird place to end that movie, but like, I don't know, even that actually feels more connected, because like they take lessons that they've learned in their trip to win the baseball game. So even that actually feels more connected than it does in this movie, because like, yeah, like you say, that coda kind of is just like, you're like, oh, right, we've remembered this. Okay, cool. Guess. I don't know. Like you say, I don't know. Maybe there's a different edit in the movie. There is a couple of different edits of this movie. In fact, I think that some don't have that coda, because like there's different, like on IMDb, the runtime is listed as an hour and 24. And I think the cut that is mainly shown in America is an hour and 24. The cut that we watched is an hour and 35, which is like the international version, which was the version that was released on VHS in the UK and stuff like that. So like, and I don't think it has the coda. I'm not even like, which is kind of weird, because I think the original version still has the basketball scene, so that's just entirely dropped. So yes, I suppose it's weird no matter what.
Yeah. It says here on IMDb Trivia, the original international version, the boys lost the basketball challenge. So I guess there's an alternative version in the American cut where they win the basketball challenge, and that is kind of that is done and dusted. Yeah. So it just feels like and in talking about the way that it's, I love the fact that the film has got all these cartoon sound effects, because I know that like Disney acquired the film, so obviously it's a Touchstone Pictures presentation, but they add on all these like cartoon sound effects to lessen the violence. So everything is kind of like boing, 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 swing, and it's like, oh no, the grandpa has just thrown a knife into somebody. You can't like. There's only so much, do you know what I mean? Putting on a comedy boing doesn't lessen the fact that he's just killed a man with a knife. Yeah,
that is true. There is, like you say, there's limits to that, you know, it's just like, I like, but like we said before, you know, even some of the lines in this movie do seem kind of like, oh, that seems a bit kind of much for a family movie. Like even like that line that Tum Tum gives, where he says, "Let's murderize them." You know, it's like, yeah, these kids are psychopaths. Like these.
Well, and even their whole impetus, like when it gets to the like Home Alone section, so obviously like the guys come in under the guise of pizza delivery men.
Yeah.
Beat up their kind, or like shove a pizza in the face of the kind of nondescript babysitter who kind of like gets a real short like shrift in this film in the way she's treated. Like even once kind of been locked in a cupboard, when she's let out, Tum Tum says to her like, "And you better have kept some pizza for us." It's like the woman has just been like kind of, I don't know, she's probably getting like $15 to look after you for the evening. And like, she's been shoved, a pizza thrown in her face, shoved in a cupboard, kind of like, do you know what I mean? A gun pointed in her face. And then you're giving her shit over like whether she's kept some pizza for you. It's like, they're little psychopaths. And,
yeah, and like, let's not forget that like, when, Colt sees that, he then goes back to the room and presents the first part that the babysitter got pizza shoved in her face and she shoved in the cupboard as good news.
Yeah. He says, "I've got good news and bad news." Yeah, it's like, fucking hell, like, justice for babysitter, I'm saying.
I know. And then both Rocky and Tum Tum cheer and like, yay! And they're like, also bad news, there's kidnappers coming to get us.
But then, like, what I don't get about that is obviously, yeah, they have the option to just, like, contact Emily, get the police involved. Obviously, their dad will be alerted wherever they are. And it will be sorted, but, like, their brains work in the idea that, like, this is how we can show our dad that ninja stuff actually means something if we can dispatch of these guys. And it's like, oh, right then, like, you had an option of just, like, nipping all of this in the bud, but, like, proving it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you think that being really irresponsible will show your dad that, like, being a ninja is a responsible thing that you should do, and he should let you do it? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand their logic behind why they think, like, yeah, that they are more than capable to take on these guys, but they don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure where they're coming from in that regard, either. They just think that, I don't know, obviously they just think that their dad maybe thinks like a kid, you know, where it's like, oh, cool, you beat these people up, cool. Like, they just have no concept of like, how a mature person might take that. I've been like, why didn't you just call the guy? Because it is one of those things where you're just like you do. I mean, if they were just trapped in the room or whatever and they had to, fair enough. But the film does give them this option that they just don't take, and they're like, nah, we're going to beat the guys up ourselves, which is exactly what they do. And beat them up quite badly. I don't know, what is your favourite kind of moment in the Home Alone section in terms of the various beatings that the kidnappers get?
I think it's a really simple one, but I really like the throwing CDs at them, because that kind of felt like a thing that was like accessible as a kid. Do you know what I mean? It would be like, oh yeah, I kind of want to I'm not sure if this portrays me to be a psychopathic kid as well, but like always having that thing of, if somebody did come in, given whatever room you're in, what could I do to defend myself? And I think the thing of I've got CDs. If I could just kind of ninja Death Star them at their heads, that would be pretty cool. So I think, that's pretty cool. Cause some of the stuff they do, pretty I don't know, it rivals Kevin McAllister and probably trumps him in a way of kind of cause basically at one point Rocky I don't know, is choking out and it near enough hangs Fester. Do you know what I mean? By getting all the ties around his neck and just tying him up, and it's and then there's that other nameless stooge who gets the fire equipment or whatever, that kind of coal pincher around their neck, and it's I think they're going to kill these. At some point, I think they're going to kill these guys. It's not about beating them up. I think they're actually going to kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely, because I remember finding that jarring even as a kid. Because some of it seems quite fun, it's they're slipping on oil, they're slipping on jelly beans, they're having CDs thrown at them, they're being potentially lynched. Wait, what was that last one?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it is very much like a 10-year-old's fantasy, isn't it? Stuff that you would do, apart from the lynching, the whole, putting laxatives. I remember finding it really cool. They're going to put laxatives in their Coke. And it's as an adult, you go surely they would have tasted that or noticed the kind of the change in consistency, because it goes from looking like Coke to looking like some kind of melted milkshake almost, in the cup.
Yeah.
And
I think you probably would have been suspicious of that.
Yeah, and so that sequence is, it's got some fun, I guess, the kind of MacGyvering little pepper bombs of just using spices and stuff like that is a cool touch. I just find it really funny that Rocky says to them, let's go to phase 1, and they immediately know what phase 1 is of their plan. It's everyone's had so much time to plan this. It's what is it? The kidnappers say first we get to feasting, then we get to felonizing. And it's so you've come in, and you're we're just going to sit down for half an hour, have a pizza whilst the kids are just upstairs. And obviously they've put an action plan in place. It's very bizarre. So kind of the fact that, it's not like Home Alone where it's from the moment they're trying to get in, they're being stopped. This is they come in, have a little sit down, they formulate a plan upstairs, where it's this could have been ample time to just get the hell out of that house. Do you know what I mean? Shimmy out the window. I'm sure they could have, all three of them shimmy down a drain pipe, yet they're hiding in the underside of a bunk bed in a chest, in a kind of chest of drawers and in a laundry basket. It's come on guys, this all could have been a distant memory. It could have been, your memory could have been, remember that time we were almost kidnapped, as opposed to you remember that summer we were kidnapped?
And the funny thing is as well, like, Colt could have told them that too. Like, cause he hears that line about, first we feast and then we felonize. Like, so he could have been like, I think we can escape, down the drain pipe or something, cause like they're gonna like eat some pizza, have some Coke before they even attempt to try and, snatch us. So like, maybe we can just shimmy out, but no. The battle must commence.
Yeah, because their plan doesn't really come into place until they had been in their bedroom and then they go and check their parents' bedroom. And it's like, Colt, you take the room that's being renovated. Tum Tum, you take the kitchen. And Rocky's like, I'll just deal with the situation at hand as it is. And what does he do? Just he ties the doors together, or kind of like gives them a bit of rough and tumble. Yeah, at the top of the stairs. It's bizarre. But I don't know. I have a fondness for it. Do you know what I mean? I sound like I'm just shitting on the movie, but I'm looking at it through 30-year-old eyes, not 7-year-old eyes. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think like there's something fun about the movie's shamelessness. Like there's a bit in the Home Alone sequence where Colt goes like, "Oh no, kidnappers," and does like the Kevin McAllister hands to the face thing, and you're just like, you're not even trying to hide the movies you're ripping off, are you? You're just being like, it's completely cynical exercise here.
Yeah, and obviously like the kidnappers almost play like a kind of wet bandits trick as well of like getting Emily to come over by doing like that. They feel like free Daniel Stearns. Do you know what I mean? Yes, like in that kind of, instead of having like the cynical like brains of the operation in a Joe Pesci's Harry, they're just all Daniel Stearns. They're all fucking idiots.
Yeah. It's Pinky in the brain with no brain,
Exactly, yeah. It's all Pinky, no brain. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I do love, I love a bit of slapstick comedy though. But so like, I still laughed just as much as I did as a kid when they kick open the door, say surprise, and then the door slaps them in the face. It's just
yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because they have like the ultimate kind of 90s kids bedroom as well, right? And that's the thing. It brings me back to the point of like, why is their dad surprised that they're into ninja stuff? Obviously they have hired somebody to come in and paint their walls with like this kind of ninja mural on the wall. It's like, so this can't be a new thing. That wasn't done in the time that they either got back or the time they were away. This must have been an ongoing thing, and they've got their Nintendo, because you see Tum Tum playing Mario 3. They've got like this trampoline. You've got Rocky with his kind of 2 tins and a bit of string, which gives you better sound quality than like Zoom or like, do you know what I mean? Like doing a phone call, apparently.
Yes, I feel that as one of the many unrealistic things in the movie, but it's something that I just rolled with as a kid of like, oh yeah, of course, like that sort of setup. You could hear the person perfectly like you could in an actual phone call.
Yeah. It's like they send big and gone, they have the walkie-talkies, which would have been a perfectly reasonable thing. It's like, oh no, we're going to give kids unrealistic expectations that they can get a couple of baked bean tins and a bit of string and have chats. It's like, I've tried that. It doesn't work even like, I don't know, like 2 feet away from each other. Like, do you know what I mean? Let alone a couple of like, the house across.
And then we get to the end of the Home Alone sequence, and we find out that the Home Alone sequence was entirely pointless, because despite the fact we have established in the movie that Snyder cannot send his men to the house, that's exactly what he does.
Yeah, I don't get it. And like, I don't get that the Home Alone sequence happened at all, because you would have thought, and I don't understand why the parents have gone out as well. So obviously like the dad is aware. It is known later on as well that the FBI have been trailing the grandpa who's been onto Snyder and his goons at the boat, that they haven't somehow like put a guy in a car outside their house as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd think that would be kind of around the clock, because obviously the dad has been on Snyder's tail for a while. And like, even there's a bunch of stuff there that doesn't make sense either, because in the first kind of raid scene, where like he looks like he's going to get Snyder, but then, the ninjas rappel down from the roof like we were discussing earlier. It's not like the dad, Sam Douglas, was in like a massive disguise. He was wearing sunglasses. And it seems at that point in the movie that Snyder knows nothing about him. But then like a couple of scenes later where he's talking to Mr. Brown, he was like, when Mr. Brown's like, oh, is he a ninja master as well? And it's like, no, Sam Douglas hates martial arts. And you're like, right, wait, what? You know his biography? But like a minute ago, you didn't recognize him from Adam. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, it is bizarre. Yeah, you would have thought that, like, back to that thing of like, yeah, they're trailing the grandpa, they know about the boat. So as soon as Mr. Brown and a handful of goons leave that boat to come to the house, there would have been cops on them there and then. And it's like, as you said, it makes that whole sequence redundant, that like they didn't do it in their allotted time. So they just send guys with machine guns anyway, and a very big, scary guy who like is just like the real muscle. Like,
Yeah, like, the character, that, Petros is referring to there is like, it's, a lot of the character names are not mentioned, I'm getting from IMDb because they're not mentioned in the film, but the character is called Rushmore, and he's played by, former professional wrestler, Professor Toru Tanaka, who, despite my professional wrestling fandom, I wasn't really aware of, because it seems like the height of his kind of what he did in the then WWF was in the 70s, before, I've not watched a whole ton of pre-WWF stuff, so like I wasn't really aware of him like as a kid or anything like that, or now. But
he's got a pretty solid like filmography though, like so he's in. He's in,
because I feel like people listening to this podcast might recognize him most as Sub-Zero from Running Man.
Yeah, or he's this sounds like a very bad credit for a film, but he's listed as Tough Asian Man in Last Action Hero from 1993, so a year later than this film, and a film that I think I have a similar fondness for that I have for the Three Ninjas, and I've watched recently, and I think still holds up.
Yeah, I've always loved Last Action Hero, and actually, it's one of those movies that it's, I don't know, like, there's certain movies from my childhood that I look back on, or I have rewatched and been like, I really liked this as a kid, it has its flaws, but I wouldn't recommend it as necessarily a good movie, but it's a nostalgia hit for me. But I don't know, I feel like there's enough in Last Action Hero that I actually do think of it as a good film, despite its flaws.
Yeah, it feels like a nice little kind of send-off to 80s action movies, right? It kind of feels like the kind of... Yeah. Right, that's kind of done with. Let's move on to the next generation of it. It kind of feels like because after that the action hero gets reinvented with regular men as opposed to the Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Sylvester Stallones. Despite them still making films throughout the 90s, the baton's passed over to, I don't know, Keanu Reeves or, like, do you know what I mean? Like, a lot more of like an everyman, a Bruce Willis, or even like a Nick Cage to some degree. Like, yeah, that's
true. Like Die Hard's kind of the dividing line of like, how kind of how action cinema kind of goes into the 90s.
Yes.
So yeah, for that kind of period of action star, it is a nice kind of send off. I'm trying to think where we are in this movie. We're kind of bounce back and forth.
So we are at the point.
We're at the boat. We're going to the boat. Basically, yes, we get a great. Before we get to the boat, we do get a great hero shot of Victor Wong in the car lights in shadow, which is it looks real nice, and I think is one of those kind of great kind of fist pumping moments in the movie.
He gets some great moments. There's one that always that made me laugh today, where he's obviously knows something's going down, and he's in his full ninja gear earlier on in the film. And he kind of pulls out his katana and says to it, he's like, "Old friend, we will look after our family." And it's very okay. I don't know why you're training in the mist at midnight, for this, but it's kind of cool. He's kind of him skulking out the docks as well with his binoculars and stuff like that. And yeah, obviously leads on to this scene where he kind of speaks to Sam, the dad, and says I need to give me an hour, isn't it? Is that classic?
Give me an hour, yeah.
That 80s, give me an hour, I can do this, I'm a ninja, they won't know I'm coming kind of thing.
And then he does that classic Batman thing where somebody turns their head and then it's turns back and it's huh? What? He's gone.
Yeah, and then he does that great. Again, there's weird things that are stamped into my brain, and one of them is him shimmying up that rope onto the boat. I just always remember thinking, that's really cool. I would love to. And it weirdly, this film, especially that boat sequence, reminds me of Grand Theft Auto 3, because I think the final mission on the first island is you have to infiltrate a boat that's at the dock. And I only remember that so vividly because I remember playing that game, not having a memory card, and just getting to that point so many times, on a Saturday when I went round a friend's house who had the game, and he didn't have a memory card, so we'd just get to that bit weekend after weekend and then have to start all over again the next week.
Right, yeah. I hate when that happens. There's certain struggles that younger people just don't know.
Exactly.
Yes. When you were a kid and the VHS tape spooled out and then you had to wind it back in with a pencil or something.
Yeah.
Rescue it.
Yeah, that or trying to record a film on a tape and then the tape ran out or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Or
oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're only 3 hours long or whatever.
Yeah, setting a tape to record at a certain time, or do you know what I mean? Somebody stopped it halfway through or whatever, been, why is this on record? Because you forgot to tell your parents, recording Commando, at the age of 9,
Yeah, that adds up. Yeah.
Yeah. I film again that, this film has elements of, do you know what I mean? That whole thing of, the villains coming to the house way out where, do you know what I mean? Out in the middle of nowhere to kind of do their mission statement, and then having the hero having to infiltrate their base almost at the end. I think this film very much hits on archetypal action movie tropes really well in that regard.
Yeah. That's absolutely true, because there's so many things in this movie that are just kind of feel a bit like other movies. Even the character of Rushmore that we just talked about, has that kind of odd job vibe to him of this kind of stoic, silent, but deadly, henchman.
So when we get to the boat, one of the threads we've kind of not talked about in this film is the fact that Colt has this big thing that like their grandpa is a bad guy, right? Like he's like, because they're in this holding cell and they're kind of all saying to each other like, "That's it, we're gonna die."
Yes. And like that comes from one of the other kind of one of the kind of things that I think I can even question as a kid, of like Colt discovers that the grandpa knows Snyder through a photo that's on an FBI file, which is in his dad's office, which his mum also knows about because she was like, yeah, just look at that photo on his desk, you know, like you can see all the evidence there because we just have evidence all about the house, you know, about the big case that, you know, nobody should know about. But, you know, it's just kind of out and about. Just flick through, you know, have a swatch.
Yeah, what I find, one thing I really do find bizarre about this film, and obviously, I don't quite understand it, is the fact that they didn't cast an actress who is Margarita Franco, is she known for being, she's an American.
She's Mexican American. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense that, like, because it is established that Victor Wong's character, Victor Wong, who is a Chinese American, playing a Japanese man, but you know, it's for Hollywood of this time, it's close enough. But yeah, he was married to a white woman, but it's established in the movie that he was married to a white woman, so the character should be half Asian, but instead they cast somebody who is Mexican American, so half Latino.
Yeah, which is very bizarre because there's that whole speech that she delivers in the car, which is like, I guess that's from my Japanese side, and I guess that's from my American side, and it's like, you look American. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, there's obviously like, I don't know, like, it just feels bizarre casting, do you know what I mean? It feels weirdly like whitewashing in some way, do you know what I mean? It's like, surely there were plenty of Asian American actresses to play that part, do you know what I mean? Or people with dual heritage who could have played that part at that time.
For sure.
It just feels like, yeah, I guess even like as a kid, I was like, would looking at it and going like, who's he related to? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
kind of being like,
that is one of the things that, like we discussed earlier, there's plenty of things that I did not question about this film as a kid, but the fact that these three wonder-bred white American kids are the grandsons of this quote-unquote Japanese man, it was always kind of like, what? Wait. And then the fact, you know, and like you say, it'd be even that little bit more convincing if their mum looked kind of Asian, you know, like kind of like, oh, okay, like maybe they're more, I don't know, like more of their dad, I guess, or like, but the fact that she doesn't look and isn't, you know, of any Asian blood is, it's really weird.
Yeah. It just felt like a point that needed to be like kind of mentioned before we like delve into this kind of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was, it was in my notes to bring up because it is one of the oddest things about this movie. And as much as the movie is genuinely unproblematic, one of the biggest problematic element of this movie is exactly that, where it does feel like whitewashing. And it does feel like, oh no, we've got to get these three all-American kids who are somehow the grandson of a Japanese ninja master played by Chinese American Victor Wong.
So, like, and I'm not sure how you feel about it. What, like, Rocky's plan to get the guard out, like, get them out of the cell. Like, for one, why is there a phone in their cell?
I put that in my notes. That was one of the things I put in my notes. I was just like, I was so confused. I was like, what? Why did they put them in that cell with a phone? And why why is there a switchboard? I don't understand.
Yeah, why is there a switchboard on the boat? Frank? Is that you, Frank?
None of this makes sense. I mean, at this stage I was just going with it.
I love the fact that there's like, we're supposed to, obviously he knows that his name's Frank, like he must know how he sounds. There's 2 instances in this film where people do really unconvincing voices of other people and the people immediately buy it. Like,
yes.
There's that moment, and then there's the moment when Fester calls Emily to lure her to the house and goes, "Oh yeah, come on over. Like, would love to see you." And it's like, you imagine that Emily has got some like Helga style shrine to Rocky in a closet, like Hey Arnold style. Yet she's happy to just go, "Oh yeah, this guy who's clearly an adult putting on a child's voice, that's the guy I spend every day with. I'm going over." Do you know what I mean? I'm hopping out of bed, slipping my jammies off and getting into some comfies to go on over to see what's going on.
Yeah, that is very true. That is also one of the scenes that made me laugh, of like, he's basically doing like a bad Mickey Mouse impersonation, but yes, that is completely convinced that was Rocky on the phone. And
then Rocky does like a real like, yeah, it's akin to, that slowed down voice that Kevin McAllister does on his Talk Boy to be like, It's Peter McAllister, the father. And it's like, that doesn't sound like a human being. It's like, that clearly sounds like a 12-year-old boy pretending to be an older man, but being like, yeah, I'm just testing the phone. And it's like, why would they be doing tests on the phone? Like, do you know what I mean? I don't quite get it. Why do we test on the phone?
People are just immediately convinced of things in this film. They're like, they don't question anything. There is no questions. It's just like, okay, that seems legit. I think we have to, it's phone testing day, right? In all the prisoner cells. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Nobody questions Emily as well when she like provides that like ransom note from Snyder that she kind of presents to the FBI. She's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, here's a note for you." And it's like, what? Like, is she in on it? Is she a part of Snyder's gang?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think sometimes the movie just forgets about things. It's just like, oh, we're on to the boat sequence now, the big action sequence. It's like, excuse me, there was like 3 kidnappers in the Home Alone sequence. Were they arrested? Did they go with Mr. Brown and the gang? Did they escape? Were they murdered? Because like they were threatened with being murdered if they failed in their mission. So like, did that happen? Like, no answers. Okay, movie, we'll just move on. Don't worry.
Yeah, they don't tie that thread up, do they? And then
they're just never talked about again.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Because then when we get back to the boat, when we're on the boat, they obviously escape from their cell, and then that sequence of them kind of, just like going about the place and beating up guys, again is pretty fun stuff. And I like the kind of, there's that moment where they subvert like there being a big showdown, because there's that guy with the face paint, who I think is the actor who played Colt's like actual trainer in real life, instead of like, he's got like, again, these guys are like guns and katanas against kids, and like, he's obviously like wielding this katana, and then like Colt's like, leave it to me, and then just like basically like burns his face with steam, right?
Yes, indeed. Burns his face with steam, and then like cuts his clothes to ribbons. That's basically what happens. But that scene always, like, that is one of those sequences that, like, from my childhood viewings, like, always really stuck in my head. Because obviously, he is probably the one ninja in the movie who's actually Asian. And also because he's got that face paint. And also because, like, he just does this weird thing where he licks his sword. And, like, it always just, like, is emblazoned in my memory of, like, what? Why did he do that? Seems like a weird thing to do before going into just being like, like, okay.
Yeah, weirdly sexual for a kids film as well. Yeah. One of the things I don't quite understand about this boat as well is there's like multiple times they go down wooden stairs, and it doesn't feel like you'd have wooden stairs on like the type of ship it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like...
Yeah, you think it'd be like steel steps, like...
Yeah, it's like this is clearly filmed on a set. Like, they had the boat for the exteriors, but it's like everything else, we're doing it on a set, guys.
Yeah, I think obviously, this film didn't have the biggest budget. I mean, like, in terms of like Hollywood filmmaking anyway, because like there is certain things where you can see that are like budgetary shortcuts of like, you get the impression that Snyder lives in a big mansion, but you only actually see one room.
Yeah, that is, yeah, it's kind of like office room, right?
Yeah, so like you imagine it's a big mansion, but obviously they could only afford to be like, oh, we've got this set that we can kind of make it seem like it's a big mansion, a room within a big mansion, but it's just a room.
So is this when we talk about the big showdown?
This is pretty much where the one thing that I did want to mention, I did think was quite funny, before we mention before we go into the big showdown, is there is a moment where the kids are fighting various incompetent ninjas who are kind of like the putties in Power Rangers, completely useless. And there's one ninja who has like nunchucks, and he's like showing off the nunchucks and beats up the two guys next to him, and it made me laugh as a kid, and it still made me laugh this time as well.
Yeah, because there's that moment as well where the kids like fashion nunchucks out of like wrenches and stuff like that as well, isn't there? Which is just like, it feels kind of ingenious that they do that, and it's like, as a kid you're like, wow. Watching it now as an adult, it's kind of a bit like, how did they do that? Like,
yeah, I mean, these kids are, as we've established, magical, or possibly, like you say, the whole film is pretty much a fantasy where parts of it happen or parts of it are massively exaggerated. But yes, now we go into the final showdown, and like, I suppose the kids kind of have their showdown. And then obviously Grandpa has his showdown. So the kids' showdown is they meet back up again with Rushmore, who kind of handily kidnapped them. But this time, Grandpa says, "Remember the dummy," usefully, and they suddenly they just beat him up. And but I always like the way. I love, maybe because like he's a professional wrestler, or was a professional wrestler before this movie was made. I love how beautifully Professor Toru Tanaka sells being beaten up by the kids. And the way he falls over is great.
Well, what I love about that scene as well is the way that it's intercut with them doing their training. Like every time they hit him, it's like the pressure points on the dummy light up and stuff like that. We get those like intercut. Like, one of the things I don't quite understand about this is what the grandpa does next. Because obviously, like, he has had this time to get in a good position. Yet once they take down Rushmore, he just jumps in the middle of this, like, makeshift dojo that they've made on the boat. I don't quite get it. They're arms dealers, but they've still got time to train. Like, I don't quite know what their end goal is as villains either. Do you know what I mean? Are they...
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, like, there's lots of things I honestly don't understand about this operation. And there is lots of things that I'm just like, why is, for example, Snyder at the start of the movie, like, when Grandpa and the three ninjas dispatch his incompetent ninja goons, like, he admits their incompetence. He's like, yeah, they're not very well trained. And I'm like, apparently, according to the movie, you're like a multi-millionaire arms dealer. Can't you just afford a better trainer? Like, just, or get better ninjas? I don't understand.
Yeah, or like, sure, yeah, the film is set up that the only kind of expert trainer that is in the world is Victor Wong's character, right? It's like everyone else pales in comparison. But it's like, I don't know, surely, like, you know, if you think about it, like, Ip Man taught Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee taught tons of people how to fight, and it's like, surely, Snyder has those lessons that he learned from Victor Wong's character, so surely he could be, like, leading sessions? That's what I don't get about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
That's true. Because it is kind of set up that, like, he is like Snyder likes to believe that he's become, you know, it's like the Darth Vader thing, you know, like, he's become the master now. And, you know, so like, and even if he's not as good as Victor Wong, he's still like the number two. So so basically apparently he's great. Snyder is great, but his training's real bad. Or either that he has other trainers, which doesn't make sense because he thinks of himself as the best ninja in the world. So it doesn't make sense that he would be palming the training off to somebody else. So whatever way you cut it, doesn't make sense. Yeah,
and then you kind of look into the fact of like what do they want? That's what I don't get, because obviously, like, their arms deal has gone down. It's not like it's established, like, they have another arms deal set up or anything like that. It's like, they just want to get out of there. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, it's like, you don't know, it's really nondescript of where they're going on that boat, or are they like, is it a thing of once, like, how far could, like, do you know what I mean? How, I'm sure they would be picked up, even if they got away on the boat, they'd be picked up by the Coast Guard in no time as like an unmarked boat, not, do you know what I mean? Without like the kind of, correct papers or like predestined shipping route of where they're going next, and be like, oh, this boat isn't on any of the logs, like, let's flag it down. It's like, oh, it's packed full of loads of illegal weapons and just a shit ton of guys in gi training in the hull of the boat,
doing karate.
Training
karate, like, because the punches they are doing, the drills they are doing. I was like, I remember doing them from karate. You know, like. The other thing is, like, again, there's just several things that are just not established in this film, where Snyder mentions a Colonel Farouk a couple of times in the movie, and I do not know if the Colonel Farouk is like a buyer, or if Colonel Farouk is like basically Snyder is Shredder and, you know, Colonel Farouk is Krang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, again, it could be one or the other. I have no idea. But, like, he's mentioned a couple of times, nothing's done with it. Like, the script of this movie is just, like, there's so many holes.
Yeah, I think they're just like, kids will like the fighting. Like, let's just kind of like, let's just whip through it as quick as, I guess that's probably why in America it's an hour and 24 minutes. Cause it's like, by the time we roll credits, you would kind of be like so whiplashed and kind of like swept away in it all that you're kind of like leave the cinema going, oh yeah, that was great. Like, do you know what I mean? You kind of, your head's spinning round and you're like, I haven't had any time to let logic set in and realise that it's a house of cards. Do you know what I mean? The simplest of blows and it will all come falling down.
Oh dear. Yeah. And going into the kind of the final battle, like, I don't know if you were thinking this as well, but like the final confrontation between Snyder and Grandpa, And I must mention, before I talk about the battle itself, Snyder's gi is beautiful. Like, there's a kind of maroony, silky thing he's got on. I always thought that was so cool. I was like, oh man, where'd he get that from? That's such a badass gi.
It looks like a kimono, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, what's great is that is Rand Kingsley's IMDb photo, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's him in that gi, so that is how he's immortalized forevermore.
It is amazing. What a great quote. I wonder if he took that costume away with him. Like, cause you know how, like, sometimes film, actors and that take things from sets and stuff. Like, if I was given that gi, I'd be like, I don't know, it's currently in the wash. I'll give it back to you. It's okay. But yeah, the thing I was going to say about the final fight is, like, it's filmed weirdly. It's like a lot of the shots are like from the rafters above, and like I don't know if it's trying to obscure the kind of obvious stunt double work again, but it's kind of oddly filmed. I feel. Yeah,
I think a lot of it does come down to that thing that they're trying to divert your eyes away from the fact that it is not Victor Wong. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of, he's only ever shown in close up, right?
Yes, because Victor Wong himself's not like a martial artist. He's done many other things. Before he was an actor, I think he was a broadcast journalist, and he did improv and different stuff like that, but he's not like a martial artist, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, but that's like when you think of like the Karate Kid, like Pat Morita, like, is at least given stuff that is doable for a man.
It's kind of simple enough that like anybody, even somebody not from a martial art background, could do. Yeah. Yeah,
and like whereas this, like, they're going, right, we're gonna get him doing like flips, like as I said earlier, he's moving around like he's 22, not like a man clearly in his like mid to late 60s.
Yeah, it's a bit much to ask of anyone, but the fact that he is doing like these kind of double backflips and all this kind of stuff, and like all these kind of aerial attacks and drop kicks and flying kicks, and it's a bit. So yeah, so it is. I guess it is because of that. Of like they're trying to disguise things, but it kind of looks kind of awkward and clunky because you just oscillate between these kind of eagle eye shots and these kind of like real tight close ups. Like, just don't look. Just it's him. It's totally him, right?
I love the fact as well before this battle that. Like Tum Tum gives us Chekhov's jelly beans, but being like, have my lucky jelly beans, and like that is the thing that like ultimately wins Victor Wong the battle.
I always loved this sequence. It was always my favorite moment in the movie, because I love when a villain gets super overconfident and then gets his comeuppance straight afterwards. So when when Snyder picks him up and is like, whatever happened to, not going into a fight that you can't, only going into fights that you can win, and then he just rams a bunch of jelly beans in his mouth and he chokes on them. It's a beautiful moment.
And I love the fact that ultimately, like, possibly the runt of the litter that is Tum Tum is kind of laughed at by the other siblings, is kind of like the one who saves them as well. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
He's the one who gets like the joke name, like do you know what I mean? Like Rocky and Colt are pretty cool, and it's like, hey Tubby, you'll just be Tum Tum.
Yeah. That is one of the other things of like a marker of it being super early 90s. Fat jokes.
Yes. What is kind of interesting about, like, once, like, Snyder is choking on the jelly beans is, like, you get that moment where, Maury, the grandpa, like, has that moment where you can see, like, real anger and rage in his eyes, and it's kind of, again, similar to like Pat Morita in Karate Kid, where like he's given that option that like with a single blow he could like end this man's life, and it hangs on it for a good couple of seconds where you think, is he gonna do what Pat Morita does at the beginning of Karate Kid Part 2, where he just does the like onk on the nose? Do you know what I mean? Like he has that like, because it's like, is he going to hit him? Is he going to not? And then just he obviously decides like giving him that final blow is not, is not the move. Like I'll kind of let him wallow and kind of, or no, he like, yeah, Snyder gets shot, right? Doesn't he?
Yeah, he gets shot in the shoulder because basically, like, Mori kind of picks him up and he is going to land that final blow, but then he looks over to his, to the grandkids, and he's like, oh no, I cannot. I mean, to be fair, like, 10 minutes ago, he ruthlessly, like, dispatched a couple of ninjas, murdering them, but, like, now he has second thoughts as he can see the children's sad faces, and he's like, no, I will not kill this man in front of the grandkids. I will only kill people when the grandkids can't see. And then he puts him down, and then Snyder is like, Snyder never loses, because he's the exact same sort of prick who talks about himself in the third person, and tries to grab one of the many ninjas' AK-47s and then gets shot in the shoulder.
Again, it feels like the FBI come in at like the exact right moment. Do you know what I mean? They've probably been there the whole time, could have intervened earlier, yet they've let it play out and gone, right, no, now he's got a gun, let's shoot him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
like, I can just imagine, like, Sam and the other FBI agents, like, kind of taking bets on the fight, of being like, nah, I'm sure Maury's got this. It's fine. I mean, like,
yeah.
If he is about to be murdered, we can intervene, guys. But, like, I think Maury's got this. Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, we got snipers in the rafters just in case, but until that point, we'll just hang back and see how it plays out. Yeah, that would have been great. A little cutaway to them guys going, you reckon he's got it? I don't know. Let's see how it plays out.
I'm taking $20 on Snyder. Like,
yeah.
This is like a little chalkboard that they've got, you know?
Yeah, it would have been perfect.
Oh dear. But yeah, because it's a kids movie, we get a happy ending. Although, to be fair, again, it does kind of push the violence a little bit for a kids movie, because when before Snyder is defeated, when Snyder hits Mori with that kind of slow-mo roundhouse, that's a brutal blow. Like, after he, like, throws the pepper bomb in his face, and then, like, slow-mo roundhouse kick to the face, and it's like, there is definitely some violence in this movie that kind of pushes the kind of PG certificate or whatever it got at the time.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely, like, kind of. And I think there was cuts made, right, to get it down to the PG certificate.
There was some cuts made, particularly for the UK release, because, like, I remember as a kid, with the popularity of things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like, there was a huge kind of moral panic about, like, kids running around the streets with, nunchucks and stuff like this, like, there was a real thing about, like, martial arts and martial arts weaponry, scare about them, like, when I was, growing up, because like, when this movie came out, I would have been, like, I don't know, like 7 or something. So I kind of remember from that time that people were paranoid about it. So there was definitely.
Yeah, and like, a thing with the end of this movie is obviously, like, the kids were right in fighting those goons at the house and then kind of getting kidnapped because their dad is on board with it all, right?
Yes, so it all works out exactly how they planned, because Dad, who was, like all dads in 90s movies, was a workaholic who ignored his kids, but by the end of the movie, he is suitably impressed by their ninja skills and the fact that they beat up a bunch of other ninjas, that he's on board. He's going to be more in touch with the kids, and he even knocks back paperwork for going out for pizza with his children, because now he loves them.
and pizza is the way to a kid's heart, right?
Yes. Although apparently Maury not a fan of pizza. Yes, there we go. But he did it for the kids.
Yeah, yeah, and then it feels like we don't need that coda on the end of it, right? Again, it feels out of place. It feels like you're kind of transported back to the middle of the film again. It's like, oh yeah, like it's kind of like, I don't know, almost like a reshoot. Like, oh yeah, we need the bikes back. It's like, oh no, we've got that bit on the cutting room floor. Let's just like tack that on the end.
Yes. It's like, oh yeah, of the many loose threads in this movie, this is the one that needs tied up.
Yeah, not even like lip service to the fact that like people were arrested, or, do you know what I mean, Snyder's gonna spend the rest of his life in jail, or those guys who tried to kidnap the kids are behind bars or anything like that. It's just, oh yeah, we need to get the bikes back to them and like give them a moment to like, I don't know, beat up the local bullies. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre way to end the film, and it only gets even more bizarre when we get to that song that runs through the credits.
So this movie is very early 90s in many ways, and one of the ways it's very early 90s is it has a kind of MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice style, pop rap song called Kid Power, which is intercut with dialogue from the movie, and it just seems like they had maybe watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 and had seen like the Vanilla Ice track and been like, oh, we need one of them in this movie as well,
Yeah, it's by an artist I've never heard of as well. It's by
Same here.
Will Rock. Never heard of Will Rock. And the use of like clips from the movie and like kind of obviously put onto like some kind of trigger pads where they're like, shut up, butthead, shut up, butthead. And it's like, they seem really disjointed with the music that's going on. I don't know. That in itself feels like some kind of like cultural appropriation and doesn't feel, I don't know. I'm imagining I'm going to Google what real Will Rock looks like, because I have a sneaking suspicion he is a white man.
It's difficult, like Googling Will Rock, like the ROC comes up, which is a different rapper, and because like Will Rock's real name's William Griffin, which I was looking up, and Rakim from the Wu-Tang, his real name's William Griffin as well, so it gets confusing Googling him.
Oh, so I guess we'll never know.
See, he's lost in the midst of time.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah. So it's a weird note to end the podcast on, but that seems only appropriate for this show. We got weird tangents, and so yes. As we wrap up, do you want to give? Go ahead. Plug your own show and give our listeners where they can find you on the interwebs. So I'm normally pretty bad at like selling the show for some weird reason, but yeah, you can find me on all podcast platforms. Just type in Caged In Coppola Connections and you'll be able to find the podcast, which started off as a Nicolas Cage retrospective podcast from the view of a Nicolas Cage agnostic who has become a massive Nicolas Cage fan throughout the whole process.
who has now moved on to shaking every branch of the Coppola family tree to determine, are they the greatest film family of all time? It kind of felt right, seeing as Nicolas Cage is a part of this absolutely majestic movie dynasty and gives me a podcast for the next 3 years at least. And yeah, so you can find that, as I said, on all podcast platforms, or you can find me on all the social medias, that is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and Letterboxd at CagedInPod.
Excellent. And I would recommend to all our listeners that they tune into your podcast, because I think it's an excellent podcast. You do excellent work. And by this stage, I don't know. I think even though we're recording this in December, this episode will go out in February. I don't know when in February at this moment. So I might have appeared on your podcast by this stage. I might not have. I'm not sure. But we're talking to the future, as we so often do in this podcast, where things are often recorded out of order, and we admit that to the audience just to confuse them. Yeah. So that's the end of the show. And I don't kind of know how to end it, because we normally end the show with our social media details and telling you to review the show, rate, review, and subscribe. But, now we're coming to an end. Maybe, if you give us a shit ton of 5-star reviews, maybe we're forced to come back. But so do that if you want. We'll probably keep the Twitter up going. It's at 90s Action. If you're interested in my other show, New Horror Express, you can find that on the website, New Horror Express. You can also find that on Facebook, on Twitter at New Horror EXP. Or if you want to tell me I'm wrong in my many film opinions, personally, you can always do that on Twitter at ScottMurphy85. But, yes, thank you very much, Petros, for joining me for this final edition of All 90s Action all the time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And goodbye to you all, listeners. I really hope you enjoyed this show for the short time that it's been on air. I know we have a couple of regular listeners, and yes, I hope everybody's had a good time with it. I did. I got to relive a bunch of movies and talk about a bunch of movies that I'm very nostalgic about in my childhood. And I also got to talk about some films that I never ever want to watch again. But you take the rough with the smooth. So goodbye to you all.
Right, I've stopped my recording.